Hey there, I'm Bram Weinstein in for Julie Donaldson. We are less than a week away from the start of training camp, and there are a ton of storylines to cover, including Carson Wentz, the addition of the new quarterback, plenty of options at the skill positions. We're going to talk expectations for Scott Turner's offense this year. Plus, Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus joins us to talk about Terry McLaurin's contract extension and how that impacts the Commanders' salary cap going forward. And with the Commanders scheduled to run through the NFC North this year, we're going to take a look at which players Washington will need to watch out for in those matchups. And the final player rankings for this year's Madden video game are starting to trickle out. Find out where Terry McLaurin ranks among the league's best wide receivers. Hello and welcome into the Command Center. I'm Bram Weinstein, filling in for Julie Donaldson with Santana Moss and Logan Paulsen. Less than a week till the start of training camp. Last weekend off. Remember those days?
Do I? Man, you know what? I dread those weekends. I dread knowing that it was time for me now to turn myself in, almost in a sense. And so I made sure that I had as much fun as I could, with my family. But, I also look forward to just having a great season, getting to start, to that great season.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of excitement, but there also was this dread because you knew it was starting. And for me, this was my chance to make the team. Was I going to be employed by the Commanders for the upcoming season? Yes or no? That was my audition, so very stressful time of year for me.
Carson Wentz does not have that worry. He will be employed and will be making a lot of money, and it's going to be an interesting first season for him. Expectations for the offense are high heading into training camp. Washington used their first-round pick in this year's draft to select receiver Jahan Dotson out of Penn State. With a healthy Curtis Samuel back in the mix, Terry McLaurin already established as a star. Coach Ron Rivera is bullish on the team's offensive potential.
You look at what we've got. You look at where there's Terry and there's Curtis and Jahan and then there's Dahami and Cameron, and you say, wow, that's a pretty good wide receiving core. Then you look at the tight end groups and get Logan back out there. But what the growth we've seen in John Bates and what we've gotten from Cole, a young tight end that's shown some promise. And you got Samus, who's still learning, growing, developing. Hodges, a guy that we drafted, another guy we feel like we can add to. We've got a good young group of guys. We've got weapons, and we've put them around the quarterback. And we feel really good about the offensive line. We feel we've gotten some veteran guys that can help protect them. We think we have a chance to score points and win games on the offensive side of football.
So let's take a look to last year. Here is what the production looked like. The strongest area was their ground attack. They switched to that mid-season. They averaged just over 121 yards per contest, good enough for 12th best in the NFL. The team's 19.7 points per game, 24th best last year. It's not going to cut it this year, and the expectations are really different. So let's talk about the offense. On paper, a lot of weapons out there now, a lot of speed, a lot of position flex that they talk about. What are your expectations?
I mean, absolutely. I think my expectations are very high. I'm cautiously optimistic about the group because they still have to come together. How do they gel? What is Carson Wentz doing? How does his personality resonate with those other guys? Yeah. But there is talent across the board. Receiver is as Ron pointed out, is outstanding. We've talked about Jahan, how great he's been in OTAs. It's a very, very exciting group, but there's this big thing of how it all comes together. That's a big question for me.
It's definitely a big question for me too. It's just, how these guys are going to gel together with the quarterback that we have. I think when you look at the history of this team for the last, 10 years, Carson still probably might fit as one of the best weapons we had at the quarterback position. So knowing that he can get the job done, I just want to see him get it done, but also allow these guys to be dynamic as they are. Don't try to put so much on your shoulders. Let your weapons be the weapons and go out there and play good offense.
What do you think Wentz allows them to do on offense that they weren't able to do in the past?
I think one of the things that stand out to me is just from the receiver standpoint, you don't have to worry about these guys now getting different coverages. Now they're going to be more, they're going to cautious of saying, hey, we can't stack the box or we can't come up because we know this quarterback can get the ball behind us. And that's going to give a lot of open windows here and there and underneath, especially in the intermediate game. So I think he brings that aspect to the receivers.
I mean, having a quarterback that can push the ball down the field, what does that allow you to do as a receiver?
Well, it allows me to be able to run every route. Yeah. Now I don't have to necessarily worry about that corner saying that, well, he's not going to run this or that. He's going to be scared of that deep threat, knowing that all our guys can run. So they're going to sit back and say, let's be cautious of giving that, that deep ball or that big, that home run hit. And it's going to allow them in the immediate routes to come in, but it's also going to allow the offense to flow a little differently, and you should see movement more than you did in the past with moving up and down the field.
It's a different group of people. Rod Rivera mentioned the tight end group, which is much more athletic, young. We'll have to see. Curtis Samuel comes back too, lost year due to injuries. How do you expect him to be incorporated?
I think that's a really good question because I think, you look at his past performance in Carolina, used as kind of that gadget player, a guy who could play running back, jet sweep guy, screen guy, all those different variables that he brings. But I also thought he did a nice job running routes from outside during OTAs. And again, he's a very athletic guy, very explosive, kind of meshes well with the type of guy they've got here. Kind of smaller, athletic, tough guys. But he's got to get healthy because if he's not healthy, then the receiving room looks a little bit different just from that omission. So again, got to get healthy. Excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, I'm hoping for the best for him. I just want to see a good, healthy, player out there when it comes to Curtis. If he's healthy, we can slowly get him active, and you have so many other guys around him. You don't have to put so much on him. How
did they start fast this year? Quickly, what's the key for them to get off to a good start?
I think it's just finding your identity as quickly as possible, finding things you feel comfortable with, and executing those at a high level. What's Scott Turner's identity, and can Carson and this group execute that?
But I think you don't have to sit there and try to find your identity. We know we can run the ball.
Yeah.
We know what success we had last year, how that turned out for us running the ball. We have to try to establish a run out the gate. You establish a run out the gate, now you get the defenses on the hill and saying, hey, well, we have to be cautious of this. And now you have those guys on the outside, those sexy wide receivers that you can call it, that can go out there and be just that.
Yeah, a little pressure off the defense as well. That's been hearing all that you need to carry the team.
Right.
We'll see if the offense can carry its weight this time around. For more on Washington's offense, you make sure to head over to commanders.com. As staff writer Zach Selby takes us through Washington's quarterback room to preview all of the top storylines that you need to know heading into training camp. Joining us now is Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus, a salary cap expert. And recently, Brad, you had some nice things to say about Washington's relative cap health. What do you make of this team from that perspective as they head into the season?
Yeah, they've been very particular with who they want to pay and been patient. Obviously, getting Terry McLaurin done is a big deal, but it enables them to continue to spend maybe in the future, maybe add some pieces after this season. They're healthy cap-wise, and they have a talented roster.
So how do you determine that cap health? I mean, obviously, there's it's multifactorial. It's not just free cap, right? You kind of have positions of value that you kind of weigh. What makes Washington so good in this area?
I think that's the big part for them, is that they prioritize spending at the positions that we view as premium and that also the NFL, via the contract values and the position markets, view as valuable. So, both sides of the trenches, they have a lot of talent, obviously. And then, a couple wide receivers that are talented. And Carson Wentz, a good quarterback. Maybe his narrative's a bit taken afar now, but a good quarterback that has some value. So, yeah, they really prioritize those high-value positions.
Based on some numbers that come off, over the cap, there seems to be an issue going into 2023. Can they adopt some of those same principles to help the roster out? Maybe re-sign a guy like Daron Payne?
So, yeah, they're going to have to. They're going to have to, what I just mentioned, kind of restructure contracts, push money down the line. And I think they've shown in a couple deals that they're going to do that or plan to do that. For example, when they signed Curtis Samuel and William Jackson, they added what we call void years onto the end of the deal. They're not real contract years, they're dummy years, but what you can do is you can push cap hits into those years. So they can do that with those guys, maybe Jonathan Allen, maybe if Carson Wentz has a good season and they feel more confident in him going forward, they can restructure his contract as well. And yeah, they really should not have the constraint. If they want to extend Daron Payne, want to extend Montez Sweat and some of these guys coming up, they can do it if they want to.
All right, let's talk about Wentz for a moment. Obviously, he hasn't played it down here yet, so there's a lot still to be determined with him, but there are a couple of years left on his contract. None of it's guaranteed. So let's take an optimistic point of view, and he has a good season here in Washington. How do you think Washington thinks through his contractual future here?
So, one thing they did that I think was smart, and I know some fans are upset because, he has this big $28 million salary, and if they wanted to push that down the line now and maybe add some more talent, they were one of the lowest spenders in free agency this year. But I think what's smart about that is if he does have a good year, you have a very good value contract of 3 years. I want to say about $65 million remaining, undervalue for a good quarterback. And if they don't love what they see, they can get out with a clean exit with none of that dead cap associated with his deal. So either way it works out, I think it goes well for them, because they are being patient, like I said, and maintaining future flexibility.
All right, so for the most part, the news is good. Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus. Thanks for joining us. Check this out. Commanders' second-round draft pick, Phidarian Mathis, was recently able to surprise his mom with a new house, posting that on social media with the caption, "Mama, you ain't got to stress about rent anymore." Really special moment for Phidarian and his family. Coming up here with the NFC North on the Commanders' schedule this season, we're going to take a look at which opposing players Washington needs to keep an eye on. And a little bit later in the show, with the Madden ratings starting to be released, we give out our own rankings for several Commanders players. On August 6th, the Commanders will host an open practice under the lights at FedEx Field. The free event is open to the public, and fans can claim their tickets to sit in the lower bowl on a first-come, first-served basis. Just visit commanders.com/trainingcamp to get your tickets and find out all the information about this year's training camp. All right, here we go with the schedule. This year's the Commanders are going to face the NFC North division as part of their schedule. Week 2, Washington will go to Detroit to face a Lions team that has had 4 straight seasons with at least 10 losses, but Washington has lost their last 4 trips to the Motor City. Last win there, 2008. So it's an early season matchup. Logan, who you watching for?
Yeah, I think the team the guy that the Commanders have to be most aware of is TJ Hockenson. And I know they have outstanding receivers or good receivers, DJ Shark, big play guy, Swift at running back, but I think this guy poses the biggest mismatch issue. How do you match up with him? He's too good to be covered by a linebacker. He's too big to be covered by a corner. You can move him all over the formation. He does an excellent job running routes from out wide. So that's who I think the Commanders have to be aware of in this matchup.
Well, first thing comes to mind with me when you talk about this tight end and how dynamic he can be is seeing how we changed things last year with bringing more safeties in the game.
Yes.
You bring in Cam Curl down, who plays the tight end position. He covers those guys, pretty well. So he stands out to me, and he's one of my guys. He's one of my favorite guys on this team. So I'm going to be watching and making sure that he goes out there to do what he does. But this is our guy when it comes to locking down those tight ends and making sure those guys not having big days.
And I love that you brought this up because he is a guy, right? He's 6'2", he's got long arms, he matches up from a speed and size standpoint really well with those guys. I think back to all the tight ends they played last year, and he was the tight end eraser. Yeah. And to have a guy on your roster like that is great. So I think the big question is, how do you get him so he can be the Buffalo nickel matched up in those situations, right?
So we'll find out. First road trip of the year for Washington will be Detroit. The next up will be a Thursday night clash in Chicago, Week 6, first primetime game of the season. They'll visit the Chicago Bears. They've got a new coach there, replacing Matt Nagy. Commanders have won their last 3 trips to the Windy City. Primetime game. Logan, you played for the Bears. What do you see in Chicago this year?
I did play for the Bears. Obviously, Justin Fields, because he's the quarterback, would be an easy one. But I think Robert Quinn, man, 18.5 sacks last year. And with this offense trying to push the football down the field more, how do you contend with a guy who's an excellent speed rusher off the edge? He's dominant in that category. 18.5 sacks, speaks for himself, creates a ton of pressure. I think if especially with this new offensive philosophy and Carson Wentz not handling pressure well, this is a guy that needs to be accounted for. How do they get that done?
Well, one of the things you think about when you talk about a guy like Quinn, you're thinking about protection. The first names come to your mind is Cosme, Leno. What are those guys going to be able to do on the edge? This guy's probably going to line up all over the field, so he's going to be left, he's going to be right. But then when you think about that offensive line, you can't just single out those tackles. You have to also think about the protection in the backfield, how the running backs fit in, how the quarterback get the ball out of his hand in a timely fashion. So all that comes to mind, but I think these 2 big guys up front going to have their hands cut, have things, pretty much cut out for them. So they have to go out there and play their games and allow the other guys to contribute to when they need to.
And I love that you brought up, you need to have different ways of getting the football out of the quarterback's hand, different play passes, different quick game, different screen passes. Keep those rushers off their game and put these guys in a good situation to be successful. So Scott Turner got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, leading up to it, Ron Rivera will get a bunch of questions about what he really felt about Justin Fields, who was in their potential plans at the draft at that time. A week later, following the trip to Chicago, here comes Green Bay coming to FedEx Field in Week 7. 2 teams will know each other really well, as this will be the 4th meeting in the last 5 years between the 2 teams. There was a woulda, coulda, shoulda game up in Lambeau last year. Packers are coming off their 3rd straight season with at least 13 wins, if you can believe that. Santana seems like an obvious choice. Who are you worried about with the Packers?
Man, when you talk about those cheeseheads, the first name come to mind, and it should be always until this guy retires, would be Aaron Rodgers.
Easy one for you, man.
So easy, man. Who else I'm going to talk about? But no, when you're missing a guy like Adams, one of his best targets in the last almost decade, you wonder now, what will Aaron Rodgers be like without a number 1 target on the outside? Knowing he has a good, guys in the backfield, but who can he be to this offense without that guy on the outfield. So, I mean, that guy on the outside. So I'm wondering, will Aaron Rodgers be Aaron Rodgers of old without that guy? And I believe he can, but I want to know who you think, how we can slow a guy down like that.
Yeah, and with Aaron Rodgers, like you said, he is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And to stop a guy like this, it is a team effort. So what I think you need to do is you need to challenge those guys on the outside. William Jackson III, Kendall Fuller, get up. Don't give these young receivers. They drafted some guys with some speed, some ability, but they're new to the NFL, man. Make them earn their check, right? Get up there, challenge him a little bit, make him hold the football, and let these big dogs eat up front. And I think that's the best way to get him unsettled. Don't let him get the ball out of his hand quickly. That's been the safety blanket with him, with Adams for the last couple of years. You know how important that is, playing receiver, being the safety blanket for the quarterback. Take that out of his hands, force him to hold the football, and let this defensive line, this vaunted group, eat.
And by week 9, they'll have finished their tour of the NFC North as Washington is going to take on Minnesota. The Commanders are going to host the Vikings then, week 9. They've got a new head coach. He's a familiar face, Kevin O'Connell, new head coach, first-year coach there, one-time offensive coordinator here. And, of course, their quarterback, Kirk Cousins, who was drafted by the Commanders back in 2012. So, Santana, who on the Vikings scares or excites you?
Well, the one thing stands out when it comes to talking about these Vikings is Kevin O'Connell being there now, having that offensive sense and knowing how to move those guys around like we did here when I was playing under that offense. You think about a guy in Justin Jefferson. Now, we saw what he did as a rookie. We saw what he followed up with his second year. And just knowing that he has a new offense in there that's going to make sure he gets off, I'm wondering, what can we stop this guy at? Now, Logan, I know you're counting because you just spoke about how we can slow down on Aaron Rodgers, so I'm pretty sure it's the same thing we can do to a guy like this. If we get after their quarterback, no doubt it's going to be hard for that guy to get the ball, but I still think he's a dynamic target, and he's going to get his.
And I love that you brought this up because I think he's going to be Cooper Kupp 2.0. I think he's got the outside body type to win big on the outside. He can win in the slot. He can win anywhere in the formation. So what do you do to stop a guy like this? And I think you need an outstanding defensive plan. I think you need to really Jack Del Rio needs to come up with coverage schemes and rules for when he's in the slot, when he's outside. Put those guys in the best position to be successful. It's not going to be one guy matching up with him. We don't have that big dog, Darrelle Revis, that can just lock him down, that can follow him all over formation. It's going to be a team effort, starting with this guy and his plan to stop one of the best receivers in the NFL.
Logan, you got anybody outside of Green Bay winning that division? Do you see a surprise?
I love that, Bram, because I think Minnesota, man, that offense is stacked. Thielen, Jefferson, Cooks, they are a really dynamic group and probably the second best quarterback in the division, so definitely a possibility if that group comes together under O'Connell.
All right, coming up here with the 2022 season quickly approaching. The latest Madden release is right around the corner, and some of the player rankings are out, and we'll react to that next. The Madden 23 ratings have started to be released. Here's a look at the top 10 wide receivers. Terry McLaurin earning a 91 overall ranking. That's tied for 8th best in the league with Mike Evans. There are some interesting omissions on this list. No Jamar Chase, no A.J. Brown, no Deebo Samuel. But it appears as if the Madden people seem to believe that Washington valued Terry McLaurin correctly. That's a nice ranking he got.
It's been like the first time in his career that he's actually got some respect, so that's awesome to see that.
Yeah, it was big just seeing that, just knowing that, I could have sworn he should have been a Pro Bowler last year, but to get recognition in this magnitude, it's great for him.
There are some guys who did and did not make the list of rankings. Rookies, of course, have to come in and prove it in the game. So let's start with some ComMadden rankings. After the spring and all the big news about this guy, Jahan Dotson, how would you rank him?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go first.
Coming
first
out
off, look at his biceps. So that buffs the ranking right there. Ready? Go ahead.
Pretty yoked, a lot of veins popping out. Look, honestly, he's a rookie. He hasn't played a down yet. I'm gonna give him like 75. I think that's fair because I remember I was telling Logan, no matter, I put up 1,000-yard season and still barely broke 80 at times. With Madden. So you kind of say screw Madden a little bit, but I would say, and not screw Madden himself. I love Madden, but just the rankings. You know what I'm saying? But he's a guy that I think that has a lot of potential, and I'll give him a 75 to start off.
I mean, Tana, after what you saw during OTAs, you feel comfortable giving him a 75. I'm going to give him an 80 because I think that's what he's going to be this year. He might start at a 75 in the game, whatever, but I think he's going to build up to something really nice. Room to grow. I like that. Good idea.
Spring reviews would give him a 102.
Yeah, he's been playing really well.
Spring.
He was playing really well.
Logan Thomas did make the list. He was the 21st ranked tight end by Madden. Of course, he missed a lot of time last year. So what do you think of Logan?
I'll let you start it off.
Yeah, I think Logan obviously had a really productive year 2 years ago, very productive when he played last year, but the injury is going to really hamper him. I'm excited to see what he does. Gigantic catch radius, understands the game with a quarterback's mind. Really looking forward to see what he does. I'm going to give him an 82 because that's his number, and I think that's where he's going to be at.
Hey, man, I love your numbers, and I love Logan. I think he was a guy that when we needed him, he was always there for us. I'm going to give him an 80. I think, the injury is going to be one of those things that we got to see him overcome. But he was the guy, he was our go-to guy besides Terry. And when we couldn't go to Terry, he was the guy that we basically, got out of danger with. So he's an 80 right now going into the season for me.
2017, Carson Wentz was a 99 the way he was playing. How about now?
99 seems a little rich for my blood at the moment, but I like what I saw him at OTAs. Again, you like the physical tools. I'm going to give him, let's just say optimistic, I'm going to give him a 79. I think he, like Utana said, room to grow, improvement. But again, he's got to show me a little bit.
I give him an 80. I give him an 80 because I just feel like, some of the tangibles still there. I saw him in training. Saw him in doing the OTAs and minicamp. Even last year, even the year that he sucked, he still went out there and showed you some of the things. No, let's be honest.
No, I got you.
Some of the things that he showed, even through those dark days, those dark times, I'm gonna give him an 80.
All right, give me a quick number on John Allen.
He had an awesome year last year. I'm gonna give him like a 95, man.
95?
He was one of the most productive defensive tackles in the NFL last year. He should be, I'd say, give him the second ranking behind Aaron Donald, maybe third.
95.
95?
I think he went over and beyond what we needed last year from him.
Yep.
He showed us that at the end of the day, if we can't count on the guys outside, you can count on me. And I think he's going to be that staple again this year.
This show, 99.
Oh, yeah.
Collectively, 99. Thanks for joining us on Command Center. We'll see you for training camp in a week. There he is.
Look at that. They're pixelated.
There's the 99.
Getting smoked.
Oh, man.
Everybody have a great day. We'll see you.